Hello and welcome to Browsing the Bible. I'm Scott Burgess. Today we begin our look at The Sanctuary and the Sea, a study in the book of Jonah. And before we dive in, I would like to let you know that the gentleman who put together the introduction you just watched, Alex Oliva, has a podcast entitled Just Be Blessed. I encourage you to support his ministry by going to the link to his podcast in the comments below. Many of you may remember the story of Jonah from childhood, about the runaway prophet who got swallowed by a great fish. But do you know the relevance that this book has for those of us living in the last days of Earth's history? That's exactly what we're going to uncover today. So let's go ahead and let's dive into the book of Jonah. In verse 2, it is said that Nineveh, the capital of Assyria, a very wicked nation, that its wickedness had come up before God. What does it mean for something to come up before God? To answer that, we go browsing the Bible for the phrase before God. To that end, we do a search, and here's what we find. In the books of Exodus and Leviticus, the phrase before God occurs repeatedly in relation to his sanctuary. The entrance to the tent of meeting, which was the Mosaic sanctuary, was said to be before God. Likewise, we find the table of showbread, the altar of incense, and the menorah all before God. Further, the high priest, as he would enter the sanctuary, came before God. So we have already established that the book of Jonah is highlighting the sanctuary at the very beginning as a way to understand the whole book. We also need to look at one story, the story of the flood. This has relevance too because it tells us in Genesis 6 verse 11 that before God sent the flood, that the earth was found to be corrupt before God. And so to understand the book of Jonah correctly, we need to consider it in light of the sanctuary of God as well as the judgment of God. Well, when Jonah finds out that he has been called of God to preach to Nineveh, he gets afraid and he runs the opposite direction. He goes off to the land of Tarshish, or at least he tries. He first has to go to Joppa to board the boat. And so that's where we're next going to draw our attention. In verse 3 of the book of Jonah, we find the following. He wants to go to Joppa, and the town of Joppa itself is informative. In Ezra 3 verse 7, it turns out that Solomon, as he was having the temple built, he had the cedars of Lebanon delivered to Jerusalem, but first they had to be unloaded at the port of Joppa. And so we have yet another reference to the temple. Now, what about when Jonah gets on the boat? Well, the ship appears a number of places in Jonah. However, here in verse 5, there's a unique word used. And in fact, when it says that Jonah went down to the recesses, the furthest reaches of the ship, the word there is not the word for ship. Rather, it is the Hebrew word saphon, which simply means to cover with cedar. And so the idea is that Jonah went down to a cedar-covered hold. Now, what significance is there in that he went down to a cedar-covered hold? Why give that detail? Why not just simply say that he hid in the ship? Well, again, the idea of the sanctuary comes to light. Let's take a look right here. In 1 Kings 6, verses 9 and 15, Solomon's temple is said to be covered or paneled with cedar. Likewise, in 1 Kings 7, the porch for Solomon's throne of judgment is covered with cedar. Similar thoughts are found in Haggai 1, verse 4. And so we have seen now several instances where the book of Jonah is clearly framed in terms of God's sanctuary and judgment. Let's summarize our thoughts right now. As Jonah tries to hide in the ship's hold, he unwittingly arrives before God at his temple for judgment. We will leave it there for today. I hope that you have been blessed, and I encourage you to come back the next time as we continue to browse the Bible. God bless you. Bye-bye. If you were blessed by this presentation, please give a thumbs up, share, subscribe, and hit the notification bell. Thank you.